There's recently been lots of excitement around Halo Infinite. It actually feels really strange that Halo fans and the wider community are hyped for a Halo game after so long. When Bungie first handed the franchise over to Microsoft, people were apprehensive, and then 343 Industries rolled out just repeated failures, which decreased interest in the Halo franchise to an all-time low. But now, 343 seems to be doing like everything right with what they've shown of Halo Infinite. However, in this video, I would like to point out why we need to remain apprehensive.
Take care, Arbiter. What you say is heresy.
When we first got a real look at Halo Infinite during E3 2020, the main concern was the graphics. 343 received massive backlash from gamers, and media outlets were very skeptical. Many were concerned that 343's messy history combined with the pandemic meant that the game was very far behind schedule, despite Microsoft intending for it to be the launch title for Xbox Series X later that year. But to the surprise of many, Microsoft delayed the game. Now, this was a huge move. I know that over the last few years, Halo has faded into obscurity, but keep in mind there was a time when Halo was the flagship title for Xbox, and it set the bar for what every shooter out there had to overcome. It was by far Xbox's best system seller. Most people believe Microsoft understands that gamers have wisened up to AAA gaming company habits of releasing broken and unfinished products. So they made the smart call to wait until the game was done. But it's also possible that the game was just so incredibly unfinished and broken that despite having low standards like other AAA companies, Microsoft knew they just couldn't release this game. However, the latest E3 showcase has fans confident that over the last year the graphics have been drastically improved. But what if they haven't? Now, I know what you're thinking. We've literally seen the new graphics. And to that I'd say, have we? Have we really? AAA gaming companies release tech demos with enhanced graphics that don't make it to the release, like, all the time. Ubisoft is notorious for it, particularly with games in the past like Watch Dogs and The Division. EA and BioWare showed the same thing with Anthem. The first gameplay reveal for Anthem literally had nothing to do with what the various studios that were making the game were even doing. It was essentially a tech demo that BioWare later had to design their entire game around. There are countless examples. What 343 has shown is stunning, but we cannot assume it's accurate. Next up, we have the story. Now, for those who didn't play Halo 5, here's a brief explanation. It sucked.
Damn it.
I won't go into detail because others already have. I recommend the Actman series on it. This story was so insanely garbage that salvaging it and making it into something good for Infinite just seems next to impossible. Despite this, there are three big things the story actually does have going for it. So firstly, they seem to be scrapping as much of Halo 5's plot as possible. There's a large time jump, and the creative faction has already seemed to be completely beaten and gone before Infinite is even going to start. Halo seems to be going for a hard reset, appealing to the storytelling style of earlier games. 343 has even called it a spiritual reboot. Secondly, the Banished seem to be the primary antagonists. Without giving specifics, the Banished are unlike any other post-Covenant faction, not even the elites who now serve under the Arbiter. They and their leader Atriox have an incredible backstory, and they were really well received by the fanbase in Halo Wars 2. Thirdly, Joseph Staten has returned to serve as Halo Infinite's creative director. For those who don't know, he was the lead writer back when Bungie owned the franchise, so if anyone can resurrect Halo's story, he can. But we can't take all this for granted, so regarding the first 2 points, it's possible that literally none of that is in the game. And I know it seems absurd until you remember that pretty much all of Halo 5's story was just falsely advertised. Does anyone remember the Hunt the Truth ad campaign? None of that was in Halo 5. As for Joseph Staten, he joined 343 Studios in 2014, but 343 has claimed that the story begun with Halo 4 was meant to be a trilogy. This means that a massive amount of Halo Infinite's story could still be working with that material from Halo 4 and 5. As I said earlier, they appear to be scrapping it, but we don't know to what degree. It all depends on how much Staten was able to change the direction of the story before it was locked in for the game's development. And an important factor is that he had far less influence when he first joined 343. Staten only became the project lead for the story in 2020. Before this, he could have been overruled. And if you think I'm being too paranoid, look at Destiny 1's launch. Activision literally threw out nearly all of Joseph's work, resulting in one of the blandest stories in modern gaming. Something I think we could see is the launch story for Halo Infinite is mediocre or just bad, and then it goes up drastically because they want this game to be a live service. It's going to go for ages. So yes, Joseph's return is fantastic, but we need to temper our expectations for Infinite's story at launch. And now for multiplayer. It looked pretty dope actually. Halo 4 and 5 focused more on enhancing the player than interacting with the sandbox. The big changes were custom loadouts, spawning with equipment, the controversial sprint mechanic, along with clamber and thrusters. Combined, these mechanics completely broke Halo's gameplay. However, Halo Infinite feels like a return to form. Loadouts are long gone and equipment spawns on the map, creating an even playing field. Sprint and clamber are staying, but the speed of sprint has been significantly reduced. Depowering and slowing down the player encourages them to fight for weapons and vehicles, allowing players to be more tactical and increasing general variety. Overall, it seems much more reminiscent of the older games. But again, I need to point out, we don't know if it will work. Like going off my point from earlier, we don't know that this is even going to be functional because this is a AAA company and we can't trust them. That's just how it is these days. And 343 has history of this. Never forget the launch of the Master Chief Collection. That game did not work for years, and 343 lied about it. They knowingly released a broken game, pretending everything was fine. And yes, they fixed it. MCC works pretty good now, but you need to remember they have a history of this sort of thing. Also, Halo 5 released with a pitiful amount of maps and game modes, so gameplay got stale much faster than in older games. Also, we've seen no sign of Forge, something Halo 5 didn't have until way after launch, so the pattern could repeat, and I cannot stress enough how crucial Forge and a good file share system at launch are to Halo's longevity. Theater mode's return would be pretty sweet as well. For newcomers, these things for Halo are what modding is for Skyrim. It's not on as large a scale, because Skyrim modding is insane, but massive amounts of community-made content being made available increases the variety and longevity of the game in the extreme. In addition to what's missing and what can't be trusted from Halo Infinite's advertising, there's also been several red flags over its development. There's been leadership changes, massive disruption due to global crisis, an entirely new engine to build, balancing the game for 2 different console generations, and possibly just the general 343 incompetence we've seen in the past. Also, advertising has been a little shaky. One example is massive content droughts. A healthy game in development tends to consistently pump out high-quality trailers and demos. Also, I can't help but think that the huge gameplay demo that they first showed that everyone was disappointed about because of the bad graphics, I can't help but think that they knew that would cause backlash. Like, they're not blind, they knew this would disappoint people. Sorry, I think they knew that. And it just shows that they could have been extremely desperate to show something because people were losing faith in Halo Infinite. So they wanted to get something out there, despite risking horrible reception, to at least start conversation. So what do I want you to take from all this? Like, I know this video has been extremely negative and you probably just want to be happy for Halo and get excited. Believe me, I do too. So I'm sorry for trying to shoot that down, but I do it because I genuinely love the Halo franchise. And until 343 proves themselves, I think the best way for we, the fans, to ensure Halo prospers is to watch 343 like a hawk. So they and Microsoft executives are terrified that an unfinished or broken game will flop because fans won't accept it. But hopefully I will be proven wrong about literally everything in this video. I do not want to be right, I want this game to succeed, but I just can't get on the hype train.
Please don't die. Please.